Good morning and welcome to the inaugural Titans of the Toll Road created by the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce. My name is Charles Kapoor. I have the privilege and honor of serving as President and CEO here at the Greater Reston Chamber. Our mission at the Reston Chamber is to be the catalyst for business growth and entrepreneurship for businesses and organizations here in Western Fairfax and the Dulles Corridor. And we do that through our year-long programming of networking opportunities, educational workshops, and special events like the one you're here today.
It's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Jennifer Taylor. Jennifer is the President and CEO of the Northern Virginia Technology Council, and NVTC is a trade association that represents the capital's, DMV area's vibrant technology community and serves organizations from all sectors, from industry, small businesses, Fortune 100 companies, as well as service providers, academic corporations, and not-for-profit organizations. She joined NVTC after working at the Consumer Technology Association, where she was the Vice President of Industry Affairs. And she launched several working groups to help the tech sector close the national skills gaps, increase awareness of the growing number of skilled tech-related jobs, and build fully equipped, diverse, inclusive national workforce. So please give a warm welcome to our moderator, Jennifer Taylor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Joey, for that introduction, and thank you to Charles and all of the Greater Reston Chamber for having me today. It's really a pleasure to be here. We're going to have a great conversation today with our panelists from Google, Microsoft, and Bechtel, and we're going to have a conversation about why they chose Reston to host their headquarters here, their regional headquarters. I do want to just share with you a little bit about my background. I've been in this area for 30 years. I moved here basically right after I graduated from college. I went to the University of Michigan. My parents moved here while I was in college. And I came home one Thanksgiving and I wanted to go to a movie. And I didn't really know the area. So this was probably 1989. And my mom said, oh, go. They just built this wonderful community. It's called Reston. It's just down the road. My parents lived over in Great Falls. There's a lovely little movie theater. It's just this cute little town, a little place to hang out. So I drove over there, and I really enjoyed my visit. My mom told me, a little bit about the history and the, how mobile oil played a role in the development. And I just cannot believe the growth over 30 years that I've seen in this area. And what really hit me is a year ago, after so many of us were living in our homes and not really socializing with a lot of people, I took a drive out to Loudoun with a friend to a winery, and as we were coming home, it was dark and I could see the skyline of Reston and the beautiful Google building and everything, and I thought, wow, this is really impressive. So we are going to have a conversation with Google, Bechtel, and Microsoft today about why they chose Reston. But it really is a thriving innovation corridor, I'll call it. I talked to Joe Ritchie about this a lot. We tend to coin it as the Silver Line Innovation Corridor, and that's exactly what it is. So anyway, why don't we get started? I'm going to have Jay, and Scott introduce themselves and tell you about what they do.
I'm Jay Farrar. I am the Principal Vice President at Bechtel for Corporate Affairs, which includes communications and government affairs. Primarily, I've spent most of my career at Bechtel doing government affairs, but I have a background in communications. I'm actually a retired Marine. Been at Bechtel for little over a dozen years, and happy to be here with you today. Thanks.
Hi, Scott Fleming. I'm our Director of Global Public Sector Professional Services, as well as one of our Reston site leads. And so that really means that I'm here to help support everyone at Google that's in the Reston and DC office as well for kind of the best experience that they can have possible. I've been here at Google coming up on 9 years now. Been a great experience that whole time, and also a resident of Reston. So I'm just in downtown kind of Reston area, raising the family here as well. Been out in Virginia for about 12 years now.
And I'm Jay Lewis with Microsoft. My like Scott, sort of have a day job in engineering side. I work for Azure and really focus on working with our national security partners and customers in the area and developing technologies for them. But I'm also the Reston site lead and work with a team of people really trying to make sort of a better experience and help us sort of engage in our community. And yeah, I moved to the area about 7 years ago. So enjoyed it.
Where'd you move from?
From North Carolina.
Okay, got it. All right, well, thanks for those quick introductions. So let's have a conversation about what was the one main decision factor that tipped the scale for Reston. I mean, it was, for you to decide to have your offices in this area. Why did you pick Reston versus some of the other places in Northern Virginia?
So happy to start. So for us, a little bit of an interesting history. We made a big decision about 4 years ago to grow substantially in the area. And that's when, we would have asked, where do we want to be of all the places in the DC metro area where you could be. But we've actually been in Reston since about 2002. And we sort of knew what we had. People were happy with it. There was sort of comparing where we were to all these other options. Staying in Reston really seemed like the right choice. So we're really excited to be expanding actually into the town center itself.
Mm-hmm. How many employees do you have in the area?
Yeah, in total, we have about 4,000 people. In Reston, we now have about 1,000, and we've sort of moved our sales team into Roslyn, a little bit closer to the customers, and really just focusing on building an engineering team in the Reston area. And so about 1,000 people now, and have plans to grow to at least over 2,000 in the near future.
In the Reston area?
In the Reston area.
Got it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've been here, similar story. We've been here for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And, every time that we've looked, I think all the employees that we have here just want to stay here, right? Which is a great sign in of itself. But when you look at just the history, right, the internet has a large foundation in the area here. We've got great people, great diverse talent, great education, great transportation. So it's not really just one thing. Mm-hmm. It's really the combination of, I think, all of those things together that makes it a great place for us as a company, as well as with that for all of our employees to want to stay here.
Mm-hmm. And your building is absolutely beautiful. And I think that makes a huge statement, because I didn't really know that Google was here, and so the location that you picked near the metro, the architecture is stunning. I love
it's a gorgeous
rainbow
building.
At night.
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
Yeah.
How about you, Jay?
Well, Bechtel has actually had people in the Washington, D.C., Reston area for probably about 35, almost 40 years. Mostly those folks were doing work for the U.S. government. And then over time, we've picked up different opportunities. Obviously, we helped build the original metro in Washington, and then we built the first phase of the Silver Line here. About 6 years ago, we made a decision as a company to move our corporate headquarters out of San Francisco to Reston. And I think it was a combination of things that brought us to that decision. But one of those was clearly the availability of skilled employees, people who have degrees not only in engineering but other types of technology. The schools in the area are, in Virginia. My daughter's a recent graduate of a Virginia school, and compared to almost any other state, Virginia has probably some of the best universities available for students. And so all those things combined came together for us. And it's also nice that our office that is set up right off of Reston Parkway is close to Dulles Airport. We operate out of Dulles all the time. Most people know Bechtel's very international. And so it's made it a real good location for us from a transportation perspective as well.
Those are excellent reasons. Those are also cited, for Amazon moving to Northern Virginia as well. Let's talk about the economic benefits of being in Reston. Can you share what some of those have been like?
So I'll go ahead and start. I think the biggest thing for us is, again, really the point of talent, right? We are an engineering organization, very heavily, right? A technology organization, and to be able to succeed with that, we need some of the best talent in the world. And so the fact that we're able to get that out here, I think, is critical to our success.
Yeah, because buying, a lot of organizations talk about the cost of acquiring talent. There's an expense to it, and there's also an expense to losing good talent. So, yeah, that's a good one. Any others?
I would certainly ditto Scott's point, but also add for us, why put a big engineering presence here? And for us, it's proximity to our customers.
Okay, yeah.
And specifically, a lot of the government and national security customers that we work with, and just having people, here locally and being able to sort of get to know them, and or even, go back and forth in some cases, and people who sort of understand, the experiences that they've had, and just being able to work more closely with them was a big part of it for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say in addition to those reasons, Virginia is very business friendly. It's a big change from California, and I'm not knocking California, but it is business friendly. They sought us out when they knew we were thinking of moving, and on top of that, the cost of living here compared to where we were is much better. Hopefully that won't change over time, but a lot of those things come together, and the infrastructure here was reaching a challenging point, but the pandemic seems to have caused companies to innovate. And we probably, for our office employees, will probably never go back to 100% in the office, and we see that around the area. So all those things combined make this a very attractive place for us.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up remote work. I want to talk about that later. I'm going to add that as a question. But yeah, it's interesting how the pandemic has propelled us into what was discussed as the future of work for so long. We're there. Something I want to talk about for a second is the proximity to the federal government here. For those of you who are not familiar with the Northern Virginia Tech Council, we are the tech council that represents this tech community, which is rooted in not only tech companies that provide products and services, but also our service providers, as well as nonprofits and organizations that make up the whole tech ecosystem. There's about 100 tech councils around the country, and what really differentiates ours is our proximity to the federal government. They are the largest purchaser of products and services in the tech space. So we are in a tremendous, we have a tremendous differentiator compared to others. And you're hearing all the reasons that set us apart. You guys had just mentioned that Virginia was ranked #1 by CNBC as the best state to do business with, and we received that in 2020 and I think 2019 and 2021, right? Okay, yeah. And so you guys were just highlighting that, and I think that Virginia, we have great tax incentives to attract organizations here, and then all the other reasons that you stated, proximity to the airports, and our talent pool is really strong. And we have 12 university presidents on our board, and I can tell you they're very committed to addressing the needs of our companies in the area and making sure that they're skilled with the talent that is needed. So let's talk about that a little bit. How important is the federal government's proximity to your businesses? I mean, are you spending 80% or more of your work that you're working on here for the federal government or commercial? I'm just curious.
So for us, it's a blend. So even the teams that we have here, I mean, it's a global company, and our teams are distributed across the country and around the world. But having people here who are sort of near those customers, and like I said, who people retiring from the military or the government, can come sort of bring some of that knowledge.
Yep.
Is great, and it teaches the rest of the people that we have, and sort of makes, it improves what we can do even around the country and around the world. So certainly for us, even just from a technology perspective, we really sort of value the presence of the federal government and customers being here.
Yeah, we're in a similar situation. Bechtel has 4 major businesses under the Bechtel name, one of which is government services. And so we do a lot of work for the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and some other areas of the federal government. But when you look at those 4 business lines under the Bechtel name, 40% of our revenue derives from work for the government. So it's an important flywheel, if you will, in our portfolio. And because of that, we've always had a proximity here with some of our offices. But now that we have our CEO and COO located here full time, it's not unusual to just drive downtown or to the Pentagon or whatever and have a meeting where we can discuss different aspects of the business we do. And so in that sense, it's made a big difference for us.
It's impressive. So Nova is home to George Mason. Virginia Tech is now here. We also have Nova, very impressive community college. I'm also a graduate of GMU. I have a son at Virginia Tech, and I love Nova. I love all of our schools here. I talked to President Sands and Dr. Washington. By the way, we're interviewing him tomorrow on our MVTC morning coffee. You're all welcome to join if you're interested. And Ann Kress, they're all on our board, and they are so committed to working with your organizations and other MVTC members to help you come up with solutions to find the talent you need or educate them with the skills that you need. How are you working with them? And how important is, a talented pipeline coming in? We at MVTC say the growth of this region is all based on the next generation of talent and leaders. So how are you working with those organizations?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump on that first. I would say, obviously you've heard it, I think, consistently here, right? The talent is absolutely critical, and that's, really current and future talent as well. And so Google has a whole set of initiatives that we work both with, community colleges, broader higher education, as well as direct kind of Google developed, so Grow with Google, if folks haven't seen it or heard of it, to really build out that spectrum. And again, it's really a spectrum of education and talent growth there, right? It's not just engineers, it's not just STEM, right? It's really across the board that we're growing that out. And so we're really excited about having the partnerships that we have in the area. I think growing those partnerships as well. And additionally, as we look to growing the workforce out here, it's not just people that are from here, right? It's, I mean, you've heard, right? Just our stories here, right? Within the last 10, 15 years, a lot of the talent coming in, and also now with remote work and kind of flexible work of the future, whatever we're going to finally land on for the terminology. A lot of folks wanting to come out here as well, right? So coming from, different parts of the country and really the world. And so being able to continue to drive the new skills, the new innovation is going to be critical. So that's absolutely essential for us. We are, looking forward to continuing and expanding those partnerships as well.
Yeah, the reality is, I mentioned this earlier, that Virginia's schools, and as a state, Virginia's support for its schools is almost unequaled across the country. I mean, California might be able to go up against them, and maybe Texas a little bit. But, I mentioned I have a daughter who just graduated from a Virginia school, and she got into every school she applied to. She went to Christopher Newport because they had a program she wanted. She got hired within 6 weeks of graduating. The opportunities here are wonderful, and for graduate students, it's unequaled. So we have engineers and tech people who come here with a bachelor's degree, want to get a master's degree, and they can pick from Virginia Tech, they can pick from George Mason, some wind up at Hopkins or GW or whatever. But just the fact that in this area there is the variety and almost the saturation of opportunity is very key to our employees, and they mention that when they want to come to Bechtel. So it's an important factor.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all those comments. I would add, just as we've built up kind of a local site team focused on our sort of Reston presence, one of the real highlights, I think, has been the engagements that we're building with the local universities.
Okay.
It's just been a great experience so far. GMU is a big one. I know Mercedes is here somewhere. And, but also Howard and Virginia Tech and
Yes.
UVA, and just the quality of the students is fantastic. We've been very impressed with the diversity of these schools and the diversity of the talent that comes from these schools. So we've been engaging in building internship programs and engagements, and sort of helping to provide some of the skilling that they need while they're still in school. I think it's sort of a win-win for us. We've been funding research actually that's relevant to some of the engineering groups that we do. So just on a couple of different levels, we've been building these engagements really recently, and that's been fantastic. And then just the other thing that I would add, in addition to the universities, it's all the people leaving the military. And so we've been really engaged with veterans groups and sort of digital skilling as people are transitioning from the military. And it's just an excellent source of, again, very diverse, but very skilled talent that's been really beneficial for us.
It's amazing. There's something like 200,000 people that transition out, servicemen and women that transition out of the service every year. So, and they have tremendous skills and are very trainable, great leadership skills. So yeah.
They do, and just the quality that we've seen has been fantastic. And some of the programs that Microsoft has put in place where they can go work anywhere.
Yeah.
But you build those relationships with them, and it's just been really successful in terms of getting really high quality.
I remember when I was at GMU getting my MBA at night, and I was in my mid-20s. And I thought, well, why are all these veterans in my class? Like I couldn't, I'm like, oh, they're so old. They weren't.
I was one of them.
And I thought, oh, they're like 20 years older. Now I'm like, that's so young. But it's so awesome to see those opportunities for veterans in our area and in the military spouses. I want to make a request for you guys and anyone out there. NVTC, we have we have over 400 member companies, and they've got open jobs, and they have work-based learning opportunities from internships and apprenticeships. And then I talk to my friends, and I talk to people like you, and they tell me that their kids are having a hard time finding these. They are, even Virginia Tech engineers. So what I want to do this year is try to bridge that gap. I mean, ideally, I want to get to a marketplace, technology marketplace to connect the two. But I don't know that we'll be able to do that by the spring. So my ask is, if you guys have any internships that are available this summer, we can use our social media platform to communicate that, and at least bring you some leads. Because I'm making those personal connections, and it shouldn't have to be like that. I want to be able to scale this a little bit more. So yeah, a lot of the young people, they don't necessarily know what some of these companies do. Yeah. So, not to pick on Bechtel, but
no, you're right.
Kind of know Microsoft and Google because it's consumer facing. But then I'll say to my young people that I meet in engineers, there's Maximus, there's Peraton, there's Bechtel, there's all these other Mantech, there's all these other companies where you can have really thriving careers, and they'll invest in you. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm curious about. So my daughter went to a small Virginia school, Christopher Newport, and they required an internship. It was mandatory. Right. Some schools do, some don't. But what I found interesting is they proactively worked with the students to help them find internships. And her friends who went to some other schools, even in Virginia, didn't get that type of hands-on assistance. And so I think that's another thing that we can look at. I mean, Bechtel hosts roughly about 500 or 600 interns a year across the country. Usually we have about 150 here in the Reston area. And what we have found over time is sometimes they find us by accident.
Right.
And so there's got to be a better way to get the word out or to help them know that there are these opportunities available.
One of the things in our strategic plan at MVTC is to build out our student membership and experience so that we're a place where they can come network, learn, and connect, and seize these opportunities. So it's something we'll be working on. Okay, let's talk about transportation. Okay, so we've seen the expansion of the metro line. We're seeing the roads widen. We see, 66 is widening. We're, I think, finally going to have hot lanes going over American Legion Bridge, according to the governor. And so the transportation here is really, really important for us to get around. I do think, sometimes good things come out of challenging times, and with the pandemic, what that's done is allow people to work remotely. We can be a little more productive with our time. It's having a positive impact on climate change. It's having a positive impact on our roads and our infrastructure. I would like to hear from you what your company's points of view are on the infrastructure here and why you chose Reston to move here, or expand here, I should say.
Yeah, for us, the 267 corridor and everything that it brings, right? And we mentioned this a little bit, but we've got 3 major international airports, all very accessible. We've got Dulles, I think my map said 6 minutes away from the office when I looked the other day.
Yeah.
Right, we've got now a brand new hotel that's going up on the backside as well. So all of that plus bike trails, walking trails, those components really make it not just for the people that are here, and like I said, why our employees that are here want to stay here and why more people want to move here, but also for our partners, right? Our teammates, our customers, all of those things where people are coming into the area, right? I travel around the world for my job, and I will say there are fewer places that I have ever been to where getting to an office is easier than flying into Dulles, driving down the 267, getting off at one of the exits, and being right at whatever company it is that I'm trying to meet with. Right? That just the experience there is phenomenally better. So I would say that's important for us. I think also from a sustainability perspective, right? Something that's very, very important to Google. And so as we see that grow in the area, it's core to Reston. It has always been core to even the founding of Reston, right? When you go back that far, it was really the sustainable component. And so I think seeing that continue to grow here is certainly very important for us as well.
Definitely agree with all that, and just not to state the obvious, but it's also where people live, in addition to sort of traveling in and out. And somebody was just telling me this morning that if you look at sort of where the tech population is, it's along this corridor, and even when traffic was bad, it was not as bad as it could be in Reston. So.
Yeah, the other thing I think is interesting is the affordability for our employees out here in this area versus, I live in Alexandria, about a mile from where Amazon's building. I couldn't afford my house today if I were buying. That's just how much they've gone up in price. And so to have employees out here, if they have to come to an office or they choose to live out here, is very important for us. And it really makes a big difference because we pay good salaries, but we can't chase the housing market. And this is a great area all the way around when you think of affordability, schools, and the ability to get places. So that makes it really good. Yeah.
I know. When I first moved here, those little row houses in Alexandria were back then like $350.
Yep.
Less than 1,500 square feet, and I think they're close to $1 million, if not over. I couldn't afford to buy my house today. I've been in it 20 years. And I think one of the things I really like about Reston is just the hybrid nature of everything. And I'm not a real estate developer, but so I'm not necessarily using the right terminology, but I like that you can have an apartment or your condo and you can access the grocery store, but you can also access the trails and see green space, and there's entertainment, and it just feels cozy. It feels accessible. You also have some privacy, but then you're able to connect with others. It's really, really flourished, I think, Reston. Yeah. Let's see what else. So Reston has a history of valuing community. You guys have talked about this and being a part of it. How does your firm address community engagement? What do you do in that area?
Great time from my perspective to ask this question for two reasons. So I'll start. One is this just happens to be sort of company-wide, our sort of month of philanthropy and giving. So lots of things going on, including lots of just events in the area and, just sort of grassroots, people saying, hey, let's, get 10 people to go, volunteer at some event. And then something that we've just started this year locally is really just engaging, sort of picking a small number of we call them community partners, just people that we want to get involved with. So it's not a super long list, but we've sort of picked a couple of organizations that we really want to get involved with and get to know and sort of build relationships with them. So not just giving them money, but it's an opportunity for our employees to actually get engaged. And so all of them sort of have this thread of sort of tech workers being able to use their skills and offer that to the community. So I'll name them, hopefully I get this right. It's 100 Black Men of DC.
What did you say that was it?
100 Black Men of DC. Living Classrooms, which I think is based in Baltimore but has a local office. And then the Loudoun County Children's Science Center. And so all are really, have this common thread of being able to sort of get involved and have our employees have an opportunity to engage.
And that's great, because sometimes as a worker, as an employee, you're so busy, sometimes you don't have time to find a place to connect to that you want to give back, so that you're making that on-ramp a little easier for them, and that's great, because I really do think employees want to give back, so, to especially the millennial and future generations. So how about you?
I think similar, some similar programs. And both really at the company level as well as at the individual level, right? So we've got, the grants, we look into the community and really try to work from a grant perspective, from a support perspective. How can we grow, how can we support, but also, again, for the individuals. And so we've got a yearly program really driven by the people in the offices, again, each of our offices globally, to identify what are the local organizations that they're working with, and then we coalesce around that as groups and come to support. I think over the last few years we've had something like 5,000 plus hours of kind of during the day time, right? And that's one of the things that Google does.
I like that you track that.
Basically during the day, right? During your working hours. This isn't something that after work go do this or take vacation. During work, let's go support these organizations. And it's organizations, again, that are tied to people in the office locally, right? So it's really the direct interaction, whether it's cleaning up parks or building bikes for kids, supporting transitioning service member resume workshops, those sorts of things. So definitely very important to us as a company and as a set of individuals in the office here.
And Bechtel here in Reston has about 1,700 employees, and we co-sponsor 3 grade schools and provide assistance. We forget that that everybody in Reston isn't at our economic level, and so we have a lot of families that are floating just above the poverty line. They have difficulty making ends meet, and so we have a group in Bechtel who has reached out to 3 local grade schools. For instance, when the pandemic hit, they really struggled. And those kids who come to school and need food, we got together and we came up with a program to help those schools feed those kids by getting food to their families. And we're not the only company that does it, but it's very important for our employees who live here to be part of that. And then the company, out of its overhead, has a very robust budget to pay employees who are otherwise chargeable to a project. We will say, go do this, and we will pick up that cost for their hours. And I administer that budget. It's pretty robust, and I would say most years we run short right about now because of the number of people who are participating and need the deferral from otherwise who they would charge. So we pay attention to it. We want to be good, not just corporate citizens, but local citizens as well.
Love that. That's great. I want to talk about returning back to work. Would love to know where your organizations are. Like, what's your plan? And I know it's fluid, and I know it changes.
Have a plan?
I'll jump in.
And I know it's fluid, but I mean, what are your plans?
We have not mandated a return to work. We don't anticipate that we will ever go back to 100% in the office. We are going to mandate vaccinations.
Okay.
And for our, what we call non-manual, so people who work in office spaces, because Bechtel employs 30,000 skilled craftspeople who work on projects. For instance, we're building a nuclear power plant down in Georgia, and we've got probably 5,000 construction workers of all different types. But for those who work in our offices, we will be mandating vaccination.
Okay.
We anticipate that we will put out a directive that tells people by the first of the year, hopefully, that working with their managers, their sub leadership, they can work out a schedule for coming back to work. I can speak for my employees. We will be a hybrid. It'll probably be 50% of the time each month you have to be in the office.
Okay.
So if you want to do a 3 days, 1 week, 2 days the next week, something like that.
Okay.
And I will have mandatory, at least once a month, meetings where everybody has to be there.
Okay.
And people ask, well, why? Because we've hired new employees, I've hired new employees, and my managers have asked, well, why can't I just have this person remote? And I think the number one reason for us is loyalty and identification with the company.
Yeah.
If you're on a computer all day and you've been hired to work for company X and you know nothing else about company X except this work you do, there's very little that ties you to that organization. There's something else that I learned at a breakfast a week ago about just human behavior. When you're on a screen, you're staring straight ahead. And that's where your vision is. When you're in a room like this, almost 80% of your view is coming peripherally. And so you're reading nonverbal communication. You're finding out what people, how they react, what they think, just by the way they are moving. And so when you add that into also this piece about identifying with our company, which we believe is very important, that's where we'll probably go.
Okay. So January 1 is the
That's
goal.
our tentative kickoff date.
Okay.
You can't hold me to that.
No, I'm not.
I mean, if we get the zebra variant coming through, that may in fact disrupt everything. But our chief medical officer is pretty confident that we'll be getting there.
I hope so. How about you guys?
Yeah,
Microsoft and Google.
We've spoken publicly about I think a January 10th date is our kind of, line in the sand right now, but it's very much, loose and in the sand, right? Again, all the conditions are really the most important part, making sure that our workforce and our customers and everything that we, our communities are safe is the number one priority with that. But we also want to give people some idea of what to expect, right? And so that's kind of the plan right now. We are going to a much broader hybrid work is kind of what we're calling it. So that point of where jobs allow it, right? Having a greater flexibility, whether that's in the office sometimes or even fully remote for some roles and teams. So that will be available. I personally am very glad that now local conditions allow us to voluntarily come back into our Reston office. So for me personally, that's been a great thing. Like the transitioning from home to work, even just in the 7-minute commute I have, is a important shift personally. And that's great that the company allows that. But that's kind of our plan right now. We're going to continue to iterate on that. Obviously, a global workforce as well. So we want to have consistency, but you've also got a whole lot of different conditions, regulations, policies, expectations, from a global perspective. So there will always be nuances to that.
I think pretty similar to both of these, except we don't have a date. We did have dates, and we kept moving the date, and finally just said, we'll get back to you when we have a date.
But just keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, there are a few things that I think there's a sense that they're going to be permanent. So vaccine mandates for us right now, it is to come into the office, not for just employment if you're working from home, but if you're going to come into the office, it is required now, and I think that will probably stick. You know, and the other is sort of a expectation of hybrid work, and so you know, the plan is when we are fully back in the office, if your job allows it and only your direct manager is required to determine that, you can work up to 50% remotely, and that's just company-wide. And I think the expectation is that's probably going to stick and be permanent. What I'm saying other than that, there are a lot of, you know, there's lots of discussion, there are lots of, you know, sort of local initiatives and group initiatives, but what I'm saying across the company that I appreciate, because I think we're all trying to figure this out, is just a lot of flexibility from group to group. We all have different job functions, we're in different places, so there are sort of corporate guardrails, you know, that monitor conditions and say, you know, here are some of the limits, but the guardrails are pretty wide.
Sure.
And right now, there's a lot of flexibility for sort of groups to try to find what works for them.
Good.
And that's really where we are right now.
Yeah, I think, you know, spreading an 8-hour weekday, if you're lucky to have one like that, over, you know, a period of 10, 12 hours is one of the positives that's happened out of this, especially if you're a working mom or a caregiver, you know, to be able to balance that.
There is one,
like
but there's something you got to be careful of with the hybrid working too, and that's that we wind up doing meetings into the evening hours.
I know.
Now, for us as an international company, it's a requirement at a certain level because I might be on a meeting with somebody in Australia or, you know, the Middle East somewhere. But for the most part, we are telling our managers to be very careful about overextending people during the workday just because you can. Oh, I want to get this last meeting in.
No, yeah.
Well, if you were in the office, would you be able to get that last meeting in, or would you have to put it off till tomorrow or another day? So we are watching that because that contributes to employee health as well.
It does. I guess the angle I was coming from is, you know, we'll be in the middle of a day. We have some people on the staff that need to go pick up their kids.
Sure.
And they'll be like, I'm off, I'll be back in a half an hour. Great. I actually have no problem with that at all, you know, so. And what I'm finding is when you let them do that, then they'll come back on at 6 to 7 or whatever. But, you know, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess, I don't know.
For us, I think there's two avenues. One is to establish a relationship with our HR leadership here in the Reston area. And I think the second piece is to find out what parts of our company would employ your types of people, the high-tech sector. And we obviously have our own IT department, but we also have a business line that's focused on cybersecurity, and it works for not only major corporations, but does work for the US government. But when we go out to look for employees, I mean, I'd say maybe 3 years ago, Bechtel finally joined the real world and using online employment opportunities.
Yeah.
So like these different employment sites like Indeed or whatever. And that's a real key for us. It really has become a real key. And we had to break kind of a long-term historic mindset to get there. Because Bechtel, I mean, we're 125 years old, family-owned company, private, and so we kind of developed ways to do things, and that's the way you do them.
Yeah.
So you got to break the paradigm a little bit, and we've succeeded in that just within the last few years, and I think the pandemic has accelerated that.
Yeah. That I call that nostalgia. Like it's it can be armor sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway. That's such a great question.
I'll add to that just real quick as well, and just say events like this, right? That's one of the reasons why we want to be in these events in the community, because I know that, you know, trying to reach into a company like Google is very hard, right? And so, understanding at a community level what is going on, that's why we're here, at least personally, right? It's one of the reasons why we're here, why our relationship with the Chamber is so important, is to make these kinds of local relationships as well. And so I'd, from that perspective, love to connect after this as well.
Can I break the paradigm a little bit here again? Most of us know that for the last 30, 40 years, the mantra has been, you get out of high school, you go to college. And guess what? We don't have skilled workers in this country anymore. We can't get them. We, as of a few years ago, have really pressed forward to encourage students at the grade school level to take on STEM-like courses or STEM courses, and then in high school. And then if college is right for you, fine. But you have to have that education to become a welder, to become an electrician, to become a skilled worker. We pay welders more than we pay a college graduate who's been out of school for 5 years.
They're over 100,000.
Yes. So if you become a welder, if you go to a training school and you become a welder, an apprentice, and then a journeyman, when you become a journeyman, you are making $100,000 a year, and some of our most senior welders who do what we call specialty welding are close to $200,000 a year. And we can't get enough of them. So electricians, we had to bring electricians in from Canada and the Philippines to help on this nuclear plant because there aren't enough of them in the US. So what I'm telling you is college is great. I'm a college graduate. My daughter's a college graduate, but technical skills we are in desperate need of, and we can't grow them fast enough in this country. And that is really an important thing for us to get our heads around. So
that is very well said. So I'm a big advocate of apprenticeship, and I think that we have to change our narrative. We as parents, we as leaders, have to communicate that there are other pathways to accessing these jobs that are available, and they're not all office jobs. In fact, my son was at Marshall High School. He's after the pandemic, he made a transfer, but he has two good friends there that I helped them. I talked to their parents and really encouraged them to pursue welding, and they're down in Jacksonville doing that right now. Their parents were talking to me saying they just don't want to go to college. I said, it's fine. So they're in an apprenticeship program down there. And these are students from Fairfax. And so we can't act like that's, not a prestigious thing.
It's not beneath us.
We can't talk like that. And I'm a college graduate, but I am a huge proponent for driving awareness of these other pathways and showing that, you can have a family-sustaining, very comfortable life. In jobs like electricity or electricians or welding or plumbing or whatever. We need them. We need them.
So I think one thing to that is, looking at the crystal ball, I can't necessarily tell you 10 years, 15 years down the road what that's going to be. If I'm looking today, at some of the roles, right, cybersecurity, AI, ML, certainly cloud from that perspective, right, I'm a little biased there, but all of those skills. But I would say one of the more important things is actually building in the mindset that what you pursue for your degree isn't what your career has to be for the rest of your life.
That's true.
Right, and so having those opportunities for active career individuals to upskill, to transition, to change for whatever the technology holds in 15 years, right? Do we need to, up-level everyone on quantum? What does that start to look like? But I think really building in the capability to learn is a critical part of STEM, and then we're going to have to continue to retrain over time as that evolves.
Are those critical thinking skills, and then also informing people who are coming into the workforce, this is not the job you're going to have in 30 years. And now that we're living longer too, you may have different types of careers. I mean, I did not end up in a career that I anticipated. So, and those critical thinking skills are so important. So just being able to make a decision and solve a problem, like even a small one. I feel like I'm constantly coaching my teams over the last 30 years how to think critically and ask questions and how can I solve this problem? It takes a certain kind of mindset.
Yeah, just one thing I would add to that. I think it's great to see all the coding programs that people are doing at a young age. I think that's a great idea, a great program. And like Scott said, I think, there are a lot of things. It's hard to know what in 15 years is going to matter, and things you might learn in cybersecurity today may not really be that relevant in 15 years. One thing I don't see, in addition to those coding classes, is actually teaching a different kind of math skills to young people. Statistics and data science are things that kids can start to learn in grade school and throughout, and they're not really taught, in my opinion, the way they could be.
Yeah.
And if you can start, those are the kind of foundational things that will be useful, to a large number of people in the future in exactly what job and exactly what technology. It's hard to predict, but teaching things like data science and statistics.
I mean, if kids in high school don't know what a bell curve is, this is a challenge. I think that's a great suggestion too.
I could maybe start. I think it's a great point, and I've moved here 7 years ago, and I'm still not quite over the sticker shock. So definitely appreciate what the person went through. For us, I think it's interesting as a company that's based in the Pacific Northwest, where for decades the goal has been trying to move as many people from around the country into the Seattle area. What we've been doing, and I think everybody here is sort of in the same boat now. We're growing around the country where the people are, and so I know just for us personally, we're not doing a lot of sort of moving people across the country to come here. A lot of what we're trying to do is sort of work with what all the talent that we have, and sort of the conversation we had earlier. There's so many people who are already here, and it's part of why we're actually growing a workforce locally. So, I think there are probably some people in Redmond, Washington, who have a lot of advice on what to do to get people to move to an expensive area. But yeah, for us locally, it's sort of a different focus.
So I think
I was just going to say the kind of two other quick things. One is, it's relative as well. And so, I talked to folks coming from New York, for instance, that have a very different, it's sticker shock the other direction. And so there's definitely that, but, across the board, I think one of the great things in the area here, again, is the transportation component, right? So yes, if they are specifically staying in, one small area, there are limitations, but the ability to get, again, along the corridor especially, to get from, Leesburg or further out here in a reasonable time. I used to live in LA, right? A commute there was an hour and 15 minutes, even if you were next door. And so to be able to, get out here easily no matter where you are, and to have that flexibility in housing, again, is it an apartment? Is it a condo? Is it a townhome? Is it a single family home? Having that flexibility is something that I think we also need to make sure that individuals that are coming here are aware of. And it's not just, how do I stay right next to the office? Start by just saying, look at the skyline. I mean, the growth here, the opportunity here is just phenomenal. Every time I drive into the office and I see the additional construction, I love looking out of our building at the development going on there, and just seeing the opportunity and the potential there. So that would be one, and then I think the other is, as we start to open up more broadly, and as we start to now see kind of the greater influx again of talent, of people reevaluating, what do hybrid work environments allow me to do? How much does that allow me to come to great places like Reston? I think that's one thing I'm really excited for.
I think you're going to see a convergence between Leesburg and Reston here over the next 20 years. The metro, I mean, we obviously didn't do the second phase of Metro to Dulles, but we designed the system, and then we did first phase. We absolutely believe that Metro's going to Leesburg, and that whole corridor is going to start filling in.
Yeah.
I'm going to date myself. I first came to Reston in 1978. I was I'd been in the Marine Corps a year, and I was waiting to go to my next duty station, and they stuck me in the area, and I could only get a place here. And I was here for just a few months, and then to come back 20-some years later and see what it was like, or what it is like, is unbelievable. So I really believe that connection all the way out to Leesburg is going to happen at some point, and I think the infill down the toll road in 66 is going to continue.
Yeah.
So it's going to be phenomenal.
I mean, just the last 30 years is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So my sights are maybe set a little bit closer in.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to the Metro stop opening.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to this beautiful new building, thanks to Boston Properties, that we've just moved into the first phase, and looking forward to it being full of people again.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody all the time, but going in right now, it's still pretty quiet. So
Yeah.
just looking forward to enjoying our new space and seeing people back in the office.
Well, I want to thank Charles and the Greater Reston Chamber for inviting me here. I personally I'm looking forward to building a really nice relationship between the Northern Virginia Tech Council and the Chamber, because there's just so many things where we can be stronger together and overlap. So where we can amplify your work and vice versa, that would be great. I want to give a shout out for anybody who wants to come to our morning coffee tomorrow. Go to our LinkedIn site, follow us at MVTC. Come hear Dr. Washington speak tomorrow at 9 a.m. It's free. You can just log on, register. If you have any issues, you can personally email me at jtaylor@nvtc.org. Also, we have a cyber summit coming up at the Ritz-Carlton, October 22nd. We'd love to have you there. And last but not least, in December 8th at the Ritz, we're having our Tech 100 event. So it's an award ceremony. We are opening nominations. So if you want to nominate a next-gen leader, somebody that you think is a real star, or a company that's really innovative, please nominate them so we can celebrate them. And I invite you all to join us. So anyway, Charles, thank you, and to the whole chamber, have a great day.